Hi y'all, it's your girl Bad Luck Kitty, or you can call me.
Hello, I'm Bad Luck Kitty, and welcome back to Hi, it's your girl Bad Luck Kitty, or you can call me Kitty. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about something a little different. So my content is usually about my life here in Mexico, travel, and a little bit of like dating, relationship, not too much on that though. So today I'm going to talk about the time when I was in a cult. So if you are new here, maybe not subscribe just yet until you check out other videos, because this video is just literally different. But if you wanted the oldies but goodies, thank you for coming back, and let's get into this story. So how did I end up in this cult? All right, so a little bit of background story on me. I was raised good old-fashioned Southern Baptist. Yes, I am a Baptist preacher's kid, right? So do with that information what you will. So yes, my dad was a reverend, and I was raised go to church on Sundays, and all that good stuff or whatnot. So I come from a Christian-based family on my father's side. My mother's side is more so on the spiritual realm of things. So they kind of, they not too heavy into religion in that aspect. I would guess I would say. However, that's how I was raised. So I know all the sayings and all the church goings ons and things like that. All right, so as I got older, or whatnot in the military, sort of kind of went to church, got out, didn't really go to church, but I was kind of like, I should, get back into church, particularly when I became a mother, right? So when I became a mom, I kind of started thinking about, they say, you're supposed to raise a child up and all this other good stuff or whatnot. And I got to thinking, we need to go to church. Well, my cousin-in-law, my husband at the time's cousin, got baptized, and she invited me to her baptism. And so I went to her baptism, and I was like, oh wow, this is a really good group of people. They were very friendly, they were very open and welcoming and things, stuff like that or whatnot. And I was pregnant at the time. Yeah, I was pregnant at the time, so when I first went. And it was a lot of people from my school that was there as well. I was going to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, so it was a lot of people from the school I went to that was there as well. So I was kind of like, oh, well, it's kind of friendly, it's kind of welcoming, things like that. So long story short, kind of like they was like, hey, you want to come to church? I went to church one time. The first thing I noticed about the church is they didn't have any like drums or guitar or tambourines or, there was no music. They sang, but it was all, just the voices. It was all a cappella. They harmonized pretty good because they were the music chapter of the organization or whatever. So everybody there was like singers and stuff like that. Like there were a few people with like actual music out there, people who were working in the industry and things like that. So I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I lived in North Hollywood, so that's the music and arts kind of scene. So I was like, oh, okay, well, this is cool, but I ain't got no piano, what I'm saying, ain't nobody hitting no keys up in here. And so I was like, okay. And I noticed for like the first maybe 20 minutes of service, it was really about more so like people, like what people were doing and how things were going on and who brought who, and it was very much a social setting, right? So I kind of like, oh, this ain't too bad. However, I left at the end of the day and I didn't feel convicted on nothing, right? You go to church and you're supposed to come out of there feeling like, ooh, I need to get my life together a little bit, just a little bit. You're supposed to feel some type of way, like you're supposed to feel convicted in the service. I didn't feel convicted. I felt warm and fuzzy. Like we went to go eat after, and I was invited over for dinner and some more stuff. I was like, I gotta go or whatnot. And they was like, oh, okay, well, can I get your number? Can I get your number? I was like, so I kind of like, I kind of ducked and dodged it this time, right? So, fast forward, and it's like a year later, right? So his cousin is still in the church. I have a baby now, going through things, and she's just kind of like, hey, you should really come check out my church. I was like, it wasn't a bad church, and I need to get in church. I need to get my life together. I need to get in church. So I'm thinking like, okay, I'm gonna go. And again, I'm seeing people. So as I was at school, I had and finished, they come back, oh, hey, let's get together and read the Bible sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I just got a lot going on. I really did. I had a lot going on. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. It never happened. So then finally I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back in church or whatever. So I go to church or whatnot, and everybody just kind of comes up, oh my God, we're so glad you're here. Thank you for coming, You just felt so warm and welcoming. And it wasn't because they wanted me to come. It's like, okay, I want to go. Like, I really want to go. I want to study the Bible. I want to get my life together, right? So that was my intention of going into the church. So I think after you hear the story, you'll hear I was a bit of an easy target, right, going in. And I'm going or whatever, and it was like, hey, let's get together and study the Bible. I'm like, okay, that's cool. So we start getting together and studying the Bible, and like we're reading. And it's a very regimented. I'm thinking we're gonna read the Bible like based on like how we feel from the week. Like, man, I'm just really feeling this type of way this week. And we go through the Bible and we read the Bible on ways, that we can, support each other through this and what the word says. No, it was like a lesson plan that was given to us, given to me, that we had to study. And it was always these people around. And I was like, why are these people coming? Okay, whatever, and everybody just got a story. So the first red flag was when we got to like, it wasn't exactly like the end of the study. It was like probably towards the middle. And I forgot what they call the shepherds, because they don't have like pastors or reverends. It was like the shepherds' wife joins us, and she was like, oh, it's so nice to meet you. I've heard such good things about you, and I know that, that you're interested in studying the Bible. So I just wanted to come along and talk to you, and just be here for you. And I was like, okay, that's cool, that's fine. And we're going through, and she was like, and then when you get to talking about your sins, and I'm like, okay, yeah, we all sin, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, we all sin. No sin is better than the next. Like, and then this lady starts telling me her story about sin, how she had been raised in the church, and she was saying since she was not having penetrable sex, she was having oral sex, that she thought she was not sinning. So she would be at church, in the back of the church, performing these acts, and she would be doing this all the time, and she didn't think it was a sin because there was no penetration, as long as it was only oral. So she was doing this all the time, and I'm just sitting here like, we were outside of like the yogurt shop having this discussion as well, and I'm just sitting there like, you gotta be like 50 plus, right? And you telling me, ma'am, I don't want to hear about what you was doing with your mouth and all this. I like literally was sitting there, but I had checked out, right? And she went on. And when I feel like she went on, and they were like, yes, I know, and I'm like, why are you telling me this, right? Like, why are you telling me this? And so then they're like, oh, you come to midweek, right? And I'm like, midweek? I'm like, yeah, no, I ain't gonna be able to make that, like, because I was back in school, and I was like, nah, I'm not gonna be able to make that. And they were like, yeah, you need to come to midweek. It's when all the women get together, and you get to meet some really great sisters. You should come. And I'm like, okay, well, it's already like Friday night for like it's called, I forgot, Bible Talk, right? Where they get together, and it's like a small groups, and you get together. People generally your same age, live in the same area. So it's kind of like a kick it Bible study. That was pretty cool. We had a good time. It was like light snacks or whatever. So we would get there, and we have a good time, And then it was the Sunday to go to church. And then it was the weekly Bible studies, 1 or 2 days a week. I'm like, y'all taking up a lot of my time. I'm not a very committed person. You'll notice I don't belong to any formal organizations because I'm not a group think kind of person. Like, I'm very much an individual. Like I like doing my own thing, which is why I have multiple friend groups, because I don't just box myself into one group. I like to do a whole bunch of different things, right? So just been like this my whole life. And I notice about myself, right? So, fast forward or whatnot, and I'm like, okay, we go on Wednesday to the ladies' night thing or whatever, and I'm like, okay, this is too much for me. I can't do it. I'm in school. I got a baby, and in this process, right, I found out my ex-husband was doing his own thing, right? So I'm like, all right, I got this whole thing, going on, right? I didn't work the first year of my baby's life. I stayed at home, took care of my baby. He worked and provided, but if you're not getting your act together, you gotta go. That's the homie now, but he wasn't a homie then, right? And so I'm like figuring out, like, okay, I need to go back to work. I'm still in school, and I got this 1-year-old, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm trying to figure this all out. So I'm like, this ain't really working, all these obligations, right? So I fell back. I'm like, all right, this is a lot. I fell back, and then, they're like, hey, where you been? How's it going on? Da, 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 da. And I'm like, no, it's a lot going on. Like, I can only commit to coming on Sundays. And they're like, well, just come on Sunday and we'll talk about it, da, 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 da. And I'm like, okay, And then I noticed, like, all these people are reaching out to me. And they're like, hey, I haven't seen you. Are you coming on Sunday? A, how'd you get my phone number? How you get my phone number? B, why are you calling me asking me if I'm going to be at church on Sunday? Like, there's no obligation for me to go to this church. Like, I go to church because I want to, not because I need to. Like, oh yeah, just da 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 da. So I get to church on Sunday, right? I never put my baby in the kids' church, right? My baby can't talk. Well, my baby could talk, but she didn't know to tell me things, right? And my baby, what I'm saying? I wasn't the whole separate from my baby type at that point. So I'm like, nah, I'm good. So if my baby can't go into church with me or she cranky, I'm just not going in. So we get to church, and this lady comes up, and she kind of to go for my baby. My baby looking at her like, I don't know you, right? And she's like, come on, let's go to, I think they call it Kids Kingdom or something like that. My baby was like, no, I don't know you, right? So I said, oh, okay, come on, let's go to church. She was like, well, you should really put her in the Kids Kingdom because she's going to learn the Bible, in a way that's appropriate for her. And I'm like, she's one. Like, we just learning sight words here. Like, she's not going, if she don't want to go in there, she doesn't have to go in there. When she gets of age and she decides that she wants to go with random people that we just met, then yeah, but I was like, no, it's okay. She's like, no, you got to work on that. You have to work on trusting. I'm your sister, I'm your sister, and you have to trust that I'm going to take care of your baby. And I was sitting up here thinking, like, my family take the spare the rod, spoil the child approach. So my family like to give ass whippings, right? So it's members in my family that can't watch my child, because you hit my child, I'ma set it off, So I'm like, yes, I don't agree with that. But I'm gonna go to church, right? So I just kind of like grab, just stroll on into church or whatever. So we're in church and everybody's come by. It's like, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you came. I'm so glad you came. And then at the end of it, they were like, hey, so-and-so is getting baptized today. You should come to her baptism or whatever. We're going to have food and all this other stuff and yada, yada. And I'm like, yeah, I can stop by for a little bit, but, then I got somewhere to go. And they was like, okay, yeah, just stop by. So I get there for the baptism. And this is when I had my first red flag, right? Like red flag was like, oh, shit ain't right? So I get there to the baptism, and first I must mention, all the women in this church are beautiful. It's a church full of beautiful single women. Church full, okay? I'm talking about real life models, real life actresses. Like, I could put some real names out there if I wanted to, but I ain't gonna put people's business out there, and y'all could you can look them up, okay? Like, really beautiful women, and they're all single. And all the men in this church are, and successful. Maybe I should also add in successful as well. Even the beautiful women who are not models and actresses, they had really good jobs. They were on really good career tracks. They had very promising futures, working in sports medicine or TV, marketing, business. I mean, really just successful, beautiful women, whole church. And I'm like, man, this church is full of just baddies, you know? And the guys were all like bums. The guys were all like bums. They were like not just like because they weren't attractive. They also weren't attractive, but they had no like solid career paths. They didn't have they would be working at like the copy and print or Starbucks and it just be like, I'm just, God's gonna guide me was just kind of their motto. And I'm like, well, how is this gonna work? Cause like, how is she gonna find a partner? Because you could only date within the church. Like you couldn't date outside of the church. You can date within the other regions of the church and stuff like that. Like it was, churches all over, the ICC, or whatever. Like there was churches, churches in Pomona, churches in Pasadena, church in, Northridge. It was churches all over. So you could date other people, but they had to be within that church because the church believed that they were the one true church, right? Red flag number one. Come on, you know what I'm saying? Like we're the one true chosen people. If you're not in this church, you're not going to heaven. Like that's just it. You're not going to heaven if you're not in this church. And so it's kind of like, well, where are you gonna find people, to choose from, right? Because I'm like, it's not very prominent and like options for these women to pick, right? And I'm gonna come back to dating in a minute. And so I get to it and I see, one of the girls who had been studying kind of like the same time I was studying, she was getting baptized. She was there and she's like telling her story about basically how she grew up and her dad wasn't very loving. He was there and he provided, he took care of her, but he wasn't a loving dad. And, she had to forgive him for that. And, she had to forgive him and all this other stuff and, just telling her story or whatnot. And so then after the baptism, I'm standing there and I'm like, that's really beautiful that you could, forgive your dad, for everything that happened. And then I'm standing here in this group and I tell you, they're all beautiful women. And then they kind of all chime in, right? Like, they all chime in like, yeah, I had a similar story. My dad left me and my mom to struggle. I had to forgive him for that, And then the other was like, yeah, I don't even know I found out who my dad was like a year ago, only because he needed like, I need to be tested for like some type of either blood or something or something, some kind of medical procedure. The only reason I reached out to him, he lived down the road from me. And they're all telling this story, right? And I'm sitting up here like, okay, so it's making sense now. Starting to come together. We got baddies with daddies issues. Okay, it's starting to come together. And they was just kind of looking at me like with the same thing. I'm like, yeah, that's so sad. They were like, yeah, we understand. We all, have, issues and, and that's what leads us to, make, we've made bad choices in men and relationship, but, God is going to provide us with a man. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it was kind of like this moment where it was like a blank stare, where they were looking at me, like waiting for me to chime in. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I was raised with a real good dad. He just died, a couple years ago, but I was raised with a real good dad, and I don't want to take this moment to go on about how my dad was just like the greatest dad, and he was everybody's dad, and I didn't want to take that moment. I was just like, I didn't know what to say. I'm like, yeah, no, and they was like, yeah, he never, did anything. How does he feel about he died a couple years ago, so he can't say anything about how I'm living my life. I think he would be okay with how I live my life, quite honestly, so I don't know, right? She was like, oh, with everything going on with your divorce and everything. And I'm like, my divorce? And they're like, yeah, your divorce. And I'm like, yeah, I'm getting divorced. It's not a secret. Why are we whispering? Like, what is it? Well, you don't think that, God frowns upon divorce. And I'm like, yep, he does. But I also think God frowns upon like emotional abuse as well. Like, why would I stay somewhere where I'm not happy? And they were like, yeah, but sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the word of the Lord. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I said, but we all sin. And that's the good thing about it. If you sin, you can ask for forgiveness. So if this upsets the Lord, I'm going to ask the Lord to forgive me, and I'm trying to do better the next time around. They were like, yeah, okay, I understand that, you want to get together and study the Bible? And I'm just like, yeah, okay, and everybody just kept asking me that. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, right? So, me being the person that I am, and y'all know Google and YouTube are my best friends. One day, I was in bed doing schoolwork, and my daughter was at her grandmother's house, and someone said, why are all these people young? The church is very young. Why is this church very young? Why is everyone from broken homes of some sort? Why don't any of the men have stable jobs? This seems like a recipe for disaster. So I just look it up. The International Christian Church, right? I'll look it up, y'all. Boom, just like that. There is a 2020 expose on the International Church of Christ and the International Christian Church, who the founder is Kip McKean, right? And it's kind of explaining everything. I'm gonna put the link in the description box because I don't know if I can put it in the video without getting a copyright flag. And it's explaining everything that's going on in this church. And I'm sitting here looking at this video this the same shit that I'm going through, right? The pressure and all this other stuff. And it's just too many red flags, right? But I gotta tell y'all something, right? After watching this video and seeing that this man had already disbanded the International Church of Christ, not to be confused with the Church of Christ. It's not the Church of Christ, the International Church of Christ, completely separate. He left them and then he formed the International Christian Church, but with the same principles, only changed the names a little bit, right? And they had the belief that they were going to build disciples and they were going to spread the word across all the 6 habitable continents. They were going to spread the word, which they are successfully doing, might I add, not at the same rate, right? And so I'm watching this and they're heavy on college campuses. They're heavy amongst single parents and things like that. They purposely, which I feel the church should do, which I should say, the church should help those that are broken be mended. I think that's one of the benefits of religion, is to provide community to people and to help those who are lost or trying to find their way. But these people were specifically targeted. In some countries, they're completely banned from college campuses. Several college campuses, even in the U.S., have banned them from their campus for their extreme religious teachings, right? So now at this point, I'm not in it for my salvation. I'm not. I'm going to this church because I'm nosy. I'm like, wow, I wonder if this is true. So I go to my aunt's house. I don't know, something we had at my aunt's house or whatever. And I'm at my aunt's house. I'm like, Auntie, you ever heard of these people? My auntie was like, I remember hearing something about them people. Something about, that's where you going to church at? I was like, yeah. She was like, I remember something, but it wasn't good. It was more they was mind control or something like that. I said, I believe that, Auntie. So I started telling my story, and I told the research I had done, or whatnot, and I tell her, and she's like, yeah, so what you gonna do? Me and my auntie, we a lot alike. We are so similar. I said, Auntie, I'm just nosy. I was like, I want to know. And she was like, yeah, I'm nosy too. She was like, but let me tell you, if you ever feel like you in too deep, and just don't get so curious to where you get so far in that you can't pull yourself out. You shouldn't play with your salvation and all this other stuff. She give me the auntie talk, but at the same time, she don't discourage me from being nosy. I said, well, I'm gonna do it, right? So then I think the next day, right after church, right, and they were like, oh, we're going over so-and-so's house after church on Sunday, right? And I'm like, yeah, no, I can't go. I got a family thing to go to. And they were like, yeah, we're your family too. You got to spend time with us. And I'm like, yeah, I saw y'all this morning. I saw y'all on Friday. I saw y'all on Wednesday. I've seen y'all, several days this week, but I haven't seen, my family. My daughter needs to see her family because it was her dad's side of the family. And we was, in a murky place at that time. So I was like, no, she needs to go spend time with her family. So they were like, yeah, you should really, think about that because is that family, really going to be the family that's going to help you maintain your salvation? Are they really cheering for you on the road to heaven? Just really think about that thing. Your family's your family. You're always going to love them. You're always going to love them, of course. But, your salvation is so heavy, I'm like, yeah, that's true. At this point, I already watched this documentary. So now I'm just giving y'all lip service. Like, yes, you're so true. But I want to take the baby to your family, They're like, oh, okay. So Monday, we go, or Tuesday, I think, we are having a Bible study. And at this point, we're at the sin part of the Bible study. And there's this verse in the Bible with all the sins. And if I think to look it up, I will add it on the screen. And it has a list of all the sins, baby. And I'm talking about they went through it. They asked me to go through and they talked about every single sin that was listed, right? And they wanted me to tell them every time I had did the sin every time I did the sin or how I performed in the sin, right? So they want to tell me when I lied and what I lied about. I want to tell me if I ever cheated, whether it was on a test or something. And I was like, yeah, I cheated before. I use check from time to time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've cheated. We've all cheated. Didn't obey the laws of the land. I speed all the time. I'm a speed demon. And like going through that, and then get to the point about adultery. I'm like, no, I ain't never cheated on my husband. I ain't never did that. But they was like, yeah, but did you have sex before, another part, sex before marriage? And I was like, yeah, we had sex before marriage. And they, oh yeah, that's so wrong. We do abstinence, in the church. There's absolutely no sex before marriage. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I'm seeing all these grown people around. I know somebody fucking right. So I'm like, okay, they was like, yeah, you can't do that, So we're making this list and we're writing it down. This other girl that came, and after we go through and I make my list, she was like, would you like for me to share? And I'm like, no, you don't have to tell me. She was like, no. And then they flip to this part in the Bible where it says that we must confess our sins to one another or something like that. And so this woman now sits up here, this random lady now sits up here, and she proceeds to tell me everything that she did about how she used to go out, get drunk, end up at men's house, wake up with semen on her, and she didn't know where it came from, and she was a really bad alcoholic, and and all this other stuff. And I'm like, ma'am, I didn't need to know this about you at all. Like I didn't know none of this about you. How she would urinate on herself, or fall asleep in alleys, and she was where she was living, like it just was like completely unsafe. And I'm just like, okay, that's very sad. Like I didn't want to hear that, And so I'm like, okay. And it was like, okay, well, you confessed your sins to one another. And then so it's like 2 more studies, I believe, before you get to the last one, before you get baptized, right? So I'm like, okay. So we go to the next one, wasn't too bad. But the last study, right? The girl says to me, she says in this thing that for Christ, you must be willing to, for your salvation and all this other stuff, you must be willing to commit to God, to the Lord, and you must forsake all others, your mother, your father, your children. She was like, that's everybody. That means that, when it comes to serving the Lord and being a Christian, that means you must forsake everybody. That includes Janai. That's my daughter. I'm like, They was like, can you do this? Like, if somebody came up to you and they put a gun to your head, and she like literally makes the gun symbol. She was like, and they put a gun to your head, and they said, who is the most important? Would you claim and proclaim God's name over all others? And if you don't, they'll shoot you. Like, would you be willing to die for God? And at that point, I'm like, yeah. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, if it come down to my baby and the imaginary being, I'm gonna have to go ahead and choose my baby. Now I know the whole story about Abraham, and he took his baby up to the mountaintop, and he was told to listen, baby, I ain't that strong. I ain't that strong. I ain't gonna be able to do it. We just all gonna have to go up in flames together. Okay? I mean, it is what it is. But so we sitting there, and she does that, and she's like, oh yes, you're ready. You're ready. She's like, oh, you can get baptized tomorrow. I'm like, tomorrow? Well, I got meetings tomorrow. I ain't gonna be able to make it. Oh no, you need to get baptized tomorrow. Like, you can't just be putting out your salvation. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, I got full day tomorrow. I ain't gonna be able to get baptized tomorrow. Like, yeah, you got to get baptized, right? And I'm like, bro, why y'all rushing me to get baptized, right? So I'm identifying that the difference between the people on this side of baptism and the people on the other side of baptism get treated differently. So if you really want to get in on the inside, you got to get baptized. The non-baptized folks, they still on the surface level. Now, I have been around for like a year or so, in and out or whatever. So I was in the know, but I wasn't in the know. But as soon as I got on the other side of baptism, I would be in the know, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, right? I get baptized. You know, they dunked me in somebody's jacuzzi or whatever late at night. It was like 8 o'clock at night. Like I said, I had a full day. It was like 8 o'clock at night. I got baptized, and they're like, oh yeah, da 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 da. And all these people are like, oh, what's your number? What's your number? I'm like, why y'all want my phone number, right? The following Sunday, right? We're sitting. No. It's Friday night, right? And we're sitting there, and the shepherd's wife is like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? I'm like, yeah. She was like, now that you're, I'm baptized and a member of the church and you'll be expected to pay your tithes. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And she was like, so it's going to be 10%, of everything that God gives you. She said 10% of everything that God gives me. I'm like, okay, maybe you can help this. Like, because we studied about tithing is one of the things we studied about, right? And she was like, yeah. She was like, so, just bring your check stub with you. Just bring your check stub with you on Sunday when you come to church, and after church we'll help you sort it all out. You should just look at that and give 10%. I said, so it's 10% gross or 10% net? Like, how does this work out? She was like, just bring it. We'll talk about it, because it's everything that God gave you. And I'm sitting up here like, yeah, God could give it to me, but Social Security and retirement and the IRS, they taking they cut too. Like, this really, they already cutting in on some things, child. So if I go to giving you 10%, it's LA. Rent is high. My rent is like $2,000. Do you understand? So Sunday comes, and I take my check stub, because that's all she asked me for. Now, some people gonna say, oh, you was scamming the Lord. I was, okay, because I had other income, and I didn't take those. She only told me to bring my pay stubs. So I was obedient, and I brought my pay stubs, okay? And so I take my pay stubs, and she was like, oh, okay. And so she's kind of looking at it, and she was like, wow, this is a bit, this is, how are you paying your rent? I was like, oh, I figure it out. And she's like, oh, okay. She was like, so your daughter's dad is helping? And I'm like, yeah. She was like, oh, okay. Well, he's on child support? I'm like, no, he's not on child support. She was like, well, how much does he give? And I'm like, whatever is needed. I'm being so very vague. And she was like, there's not a set amount, like through the court or anything. I'm like, no, we don't, even to this day, we still don't have a court agreement. I'm like, yeah, no, we agreed to keep the courts out of, our family affairs or whatever. I'm like, he's fully okay with taking care of his daughter or whatever. She was like, well, what if he decides not to pay 1 month? I said, okay, he'll just pay double the next month or something. I was like, I'm sure that he's going to take care of his child. She was like, you should think about these things, because, that's going to adjust how much you're going to have to pay in tithes. And I was like, why would that adjust how much I have to pay in tithes, right? So if my, check at time was like $4,000 or $4,200, so I was supposed to give like $400. I was supposed to give like $420 a month based on what my pay stubs were at the time, right? And she says, yeah. She was like, well, then your rent is, you have pretty good rent, because I know where you live. And I'm like, yeah, because again, a lot of people from the school went to this church, so we all lived by this train, and we all caught the train to go downtown to go to school. So she pretty much was guesstimating how much my rent was. And she was like, you don't think about getting a roommate? And I'm like, no, I got a roommate already. And she was like, you should get a roommate, that way somebody can help you pay the rent. And I was like, no, I don't want a roommate. She was like, you really should. It's really the best to have, maybe another sister or two. You insisted and saying you actually get one roommate, and now you think I should get two. Now you think I should get two roommates? Yeah, one sister. That way they can help you on your journey. You're becoming a single woman. You're gonna have different temptations and things like that. They can be there to encourage you and help you on the way and help you with your baby and all this other stuff. I'm like, it's a handful of people in this church that my child actually like. And you think I'm about to have a roommate, and my baby don't even like half the people here. Like, my baby just like that. My baby like her own space. To this day, she's very much so an individual as well, you know. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Well, you know, you should think about it. So how much did he give you this month? They knew his name, right? And they were like, how much did he give you this month? I'm like, I don't know. They were like, oh, well, you need to figure out how much it is, because you need to give 10% of that. You need to give 10% of everything God gives to you. And anything that God gives you, God gives you, you know, this to be able to provide. I'm like, so if he is paying half of my rent, the half of the rent that he gives me, I should give 10% of that. So what if the half of the rent, I needed the half of the rent, and that 10% missing would make me short on my rent? So now I'm asking questions, because now you really got me. I didn't know they asked for the, like, so I'm now getting that point, like, you're asking for my checks, so this is bold. But at the same time, now you wanting any monetary support that's given for my daughter, right? I'm like, how you gonna take from a baby, right? And so I'm like, okay. And it was like, yeah, so what is 10%? So anytime he gives you anything, you know, you need to keep track of it, and you need to give 10% of that as well, right? And so I'm like, okay, so how am I supposed to pay this? Is this a weekly, a monthly? Well, as you receive it is how you should pay it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, right? Again, I only took the pay stub, and then I told them that, you know, whatever he gave me. So they're like, oh, okay, that's cool. I ain't shady on the 10%, right? I get the whole 10%, but $420, 500 something, like, you know, like, it's like, this is crazy from one household. Y'all, I'm a single mother in Los Angeles, California at this time, okay? Like, my rent was $2,000. My rent was like 1970 something or whatever. So I'm like, okay, like, this is crazy, right? So I'm like, now I really want to know what else, right? Because like I said, the other side, I'm trying to get to the other side of baptism, right? I'm like, okay, so now they starting to expose themselves, right? So I'm like, okay, you know, that's cool or whatever. So I'm in the church, and like this one guy, he was very nerdy or whatever. He comes up, he's like, oh, da 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 da, how's it going on, da da da. He's like, I heard you were, you know, getting a divorce. That's so sad, da da da. And I'm like, yeah. He was like, oh yeah, that's good. He was like, you know, in the future, you'll find the right person here in the kingdom, da 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, that's good. Thank you for that. And he was like, yeah, that's cool. And I'm sitting up here thinking to myself, Lord, if I have to date only within this church, I'm gonna be goddamn single old maid, because again, I ain't seen nobody. I'm telling you, nobody, right? And so he was like, yeah, I'm going on an encouragement date with so and so. And now I'm looking, I'm like, okay, that's good. Look at you. You know, that's real good. He was like, yeah, I'm going on an encouragement date. And I'm sitting up here like, I didn't heard this word encouragement date. And I said, hey, could you tell me what an encouragement date is? I've heard the word a lot, but you know, I'm not in a dating scene. So what's an encouragement date? An encouragement date is not a date per se, right? It's not a date in the sense that you and I were going on a date. Like, Joe comes up to me and is like, hey girl, you looking good. Let me take you out for dinner on Saturday night. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's go to dinner. Okay, cool. All right, pick you up at 7. It's not like that. An encouragement date is, Joe would come ask me, hey, would you like to go on an encouragement date? Joe could absolutely not like me. Joe probably think I'm the hideous creature from the deep. Joe does not like me. But the other men in the church have encouraged Joe to take me out, to encourage me to stay in my faith, right? Because they acknowledge that men and women have needs. So in a way to fill the void is to just have the guys take girls out for ice cream, or go to the movies or the arcade, or you know what I'm saying, grab some lunch or something. But you never go by yourself. If I go out with Joe is also, we are also going out with Cindy, Sue, and their two, whoever guys agreed to date them, whether they're in a formal dating or courtship, or if we're just going out, right? It's a group date. And you're not to be, you know, kissing and holding hands or off having intimate private conversations. You are to stay in this group. This is just to say, hey, you know, you're not completely ugly, you know, and I just want to let you know that somebody's going to take you on one of these dates one day, and they're actually going to you know, be feeling your personality and like you. So just stay encouraged to keep on keeping on, Quasimodo, somebody's gonna come for you one day, okay? Like that's what it is, right? So even with the encouragement dates, like it could also be a part of a group outing, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, that's nice. So I'm invited on a group outing one day, all right? And it's a few of the couples that are courting, right? Courting gets to the point to where in order to get to dating, you have to court first. So that means you went on the encouragement date, you liked each other, then you went back and you told your discipler. The discipler is the person who studied the Bible with you while you were going through the initial phase of getting into the church, right? So you have this discipler, which is a person that you're supposed to check in with every week, and you're supposed to be telling them how you're doing on every single thing. Mind you, this person, my discipler actually was cool, you know what I'm saying? She was also a young professional woman, single mom as well, doing her thing. She was cool, but there was this like, I'm not about to tell you everything I got going on, right? It's no shame. I have no shame in my game. I struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder from being, blown up and being in Iraq 3 different times, right? So I'm telling her like, XYZ, elemental P, I had to, meet my therapist this week. And this woman says to me, oh, this is, not to negate, or to diminish what you have going on with your mental health issues, but, is it really real? Or could you have, a little more faith in the Lord and these things disappear? And I'm like, how is the faith in the Lord gonna help me? Because I heard a car accident right outside my balcony and it jolted me out of my sleep and I had like a fucked up week, right? Like, how is my faith in the Lord gonna save me from a sound? Like, unless the Lord, and why the Lord didn't just come in and cover my ears, right? I'm like, I'm learning how to, cope with daily life. I had only been out the military like a year at this point, barely. No, it had to be over a year because I had my baby like after a year. So it's like 2 years or whatever at this point, right? I came back from Iraq and I was separated like not even 28 days later, like 20 days later, I was separated from the military. So it's like, okay. I don't know why you would say that to anybody, but it's just a point to prove that these disciplers that you're supposed to go through to and get therapy, they're not. And it's not therapy, it's just, counseling, and they're supposed to, give you guidance through the Bible, right? And it's like, you don't have no type of certification. You're a nutritionist. Like, you have no certification to tell me that this licensed professional is not qualified to help me with something, right? Like, are you kidding me? I'm like, oh, okay. So back to the courting part. You go to your discipler, right? And your disciplers, the guy's discipler, which is a guy, and then the girl's discipler, who is a woman. Everything is very gender specific. There's no commingling of genders, okay? Men counsel men, women counsel women. Women do the women thing, men do the men thing. Women are taught to fully submit to their men counterparts, things like that, right? And if your discipler feels that you're good and you're on a good journey, and his discipler feels that they're good and he's good and he's on a good journey, then they'll say, okay, you guys can court, which means you can go out on group outings together, right? And you need to have clear boundaries, okay? So, things need to be in place. Like you agree not to be alone with one another, not to go over each other's houses alone, not to not to call each other after 9 o'clock at night, just things, not to see other people, like little stuff like that. So you court. So you go out on these group outings. So I was invited out on this group outing, and and we're out on this group outing with some of the other courting couples, right? And this girl is there and she's looking very sad because she's also just a single person too. And I'm like, hey, what's up? Like, why you looking so sad? And she's like, oh, no, nothing. I'm like, okay, I ain't just had person to be like begging you to tell me something, right? So we in there, whatever, and we're eating. It's at some bar. I don't know, some bar, whatever. So it's some guys at like the table, like over, not next to us, but kind of diagonal, right? They looking, they smiling or whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm smiling back too. We already know how the scene go. You smile back, da 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 da, or whatever. So the guy was like, oh, okay, so they sent us a drink, right? I'm like, well, they sent a drink. I'm like, I'm not drinking. So I'm like, hey, does anybody want this drink or whatever? And they were like, you're drinking alcohol? And I was like, no, I'm not drinking. I was like, the guys at this table over here bought it for me. They're like, well, send it back. I'm like, send it back? I'm about to go over here and see what's up. Like, oh, what are you talking about, send it back? I ain't about to send it back. You see them? Like, come on now. Like, and the girl is kind of sitting there looking at me like, I can't believe you're, and they're like, no, you have to send the drink back. And I'm like, why would I send this drink back? Like, clearly they're drinking brown liquor over there. Like, this is definitely like a cocktail of some sort. And so they're like, no, you have to send it back or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not sending it back. Like, I'm not doing it. And so then one of the guys get up. He's like, okay, well, I'll take it back for you. And I'm like, okay, if that's what you, I don't think you should. I was like, no, don't do it. I won't do it. So I take the drink. I pick the drink up. I pick the 2 drinks up and I walk back over there. And I walk over there and I tell the guys, I'm like, hey, we're fasting. I straight up lied. I'm like, we're fasting. I'm like, I really appreciate the gesture, but we're fasting from alcohol right now. You know what I'm saying? Trying to, we're on a fitness journey. So I really appreciate you sending the drinks over. And I was like, so I'm gonna just leave these here if y'all don't mind. They was like, yeah, no problem. Can get your phone number. So I was like, oh, okay, so I gave my phone number, right? So then I go back over there and they were like, yeah, you can't do that, da 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 da. And I'm like, you can't have one drink? I'm like, I thought you couldn't get drunk. I thought you could drink, but you could get drunk. They were like, no, well, it's different. And I'm like, how is it different? Because I have been at these Bible talks and we've had wine at the Bible talks, right? I'm sitting up here like, so you can't drink a drink, right? So I'm like, okay, whatever. I was like, well, it's whatever. I didn't want to drink anyway, so it's no big deal. So this like Friday. So like Saturday morning, I wake up and like I have all these text messages, all these missed calls and everything. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, why I got all these messages or whatever? I just went on about my business, like, because I'm not about to answer. Y'all probably want me to go. They also do this thing on Saturday where they would get out with buckets and shake buckets for donations. I'm not about to do that, right? I'm not about to get up on Saturday morning and do it. That just ain't who I am. I'm gonna get up, go to spin class, and that's about it. So I was like, okay, whatever. They probably want me to come shake buckets. I ain't shaking no buckets. So I'm just going here about my business. So finally, like the day goes on. It's like the middle of the day at this point. And I get a notification on my phone that there's somebody at the door putting my code in, trying to contact me. And I'm like, who would it be? I don't have anything. I didn't order anything. Da 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 da. I'm just pressed, right? Because if it was Amazon, they would have took it to the office. And I'm like, okay. So I answer. I'm like, hello. It's my discipler and like 3 other women. They're like, we need to talk to you. Are you okay? Is everything okay? We need to talk to you. We feel like you're in stress. You're distressed, and we need to talk to you. And I'm like, how would you think I'm in distress? Like, where did you get this from? And they're like, yeah, well, we just want to talk to you. I'm like, all right, cool. Give me a minute. So I put on my shoes. I go down. I let them in, and then we go upstairs to the rooftop like guest room or whatever. And so we're up there, and they're like, how are things going? I'm like, fine. Like, none of these people have ever been to my house, and they were like, well, what's going on with your apartment? And I'm like, nothing. They're like, so why haven't you answered any of our messages? And I'm sitting here looking at my phone now, like, y'all cannot really have been so serious to send me all these messages this morning. So it's like noon. And I'm like, and then thought to come over here. And they were like, well, we were so worried about you after last night. And I was like, what happened last night? I said, did something happen? Did somebody get in a car accident or something leaving, the restaurant? And they were like, no. They were like, just those guys talking to you, you're still married and, and they sending you drinks and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I took the drinks back. They said nobody wanted the drinks. I took the drinks back. I was like, what's the big deal? They were like, well, you can't be accepting things like that. That's wrong, da 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 da. And I'm like, okay, so this is what all this is for. I said, y'all could stay at home, right? And they're like, so who's in your apartment right now? Nobody. Then why didn't we go to your apartment? I said, have you ever been to my apartment? And I'm looking at my discipler like, have you ever been in my apartment? And she's like, no. I'm like, yeah, my home is my home. Like, I don't have a lot of people in my home. My home is a very personal, intimate space for me. So why would I have you in my house? And she was like, because we're your sisters, And she was like, I just think that we should, take a look. And I said, there's nothing to see in my apartment. I said, except for some laundry on the sofa that I left to, come talk to y'all. But other than that, there's nothing there. And they're like, well, then why don't we go into? I said, because no one goes into my apartment. I don't have anybody in my house like that. So it is what it is, right? And they're like, okay, well, let's just read. So we start reading the Bible about fornication and sin and adultery and all this other stuff. And, and everybody and then people start telling me their story about how they used to be hoes. And I'm like, okay, you had your hoe season. Okay, who cares, right? So I'm like, okay, so we finally end. I'm like, y'all, I really hate to be rude, but, I got to be somewhere at 3 o'clock. Like, I need to, finish what I'm doing, or whatever. At this point, it's like 1:30, right? And I'm like, I spend too much time on this as it is, right? And they're like, oh, okay, the shepherd's wife, she's going to want to talk to you tomorrow because whoever this other guy was that was there, he feels like it's a big deal. So he told the shepherd and he told his wife. So that's why the wife keeps showing up, right? Because the man can't talk to me, the wife has to talk to me. I'm like, oh, okay, right? So we're going through it, and on this Sunday, we're in church, and this man gets up in front of the church, and he says, hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm engaged to this other woman, right? And everybody's just crowded around this woman, right? And this man gets up there to tell his story. And he says, I'm engaged to this woman. And they're sitting here, everybody just got their hand on her. Like, they're just out touching her, holding, they got their hand on her. And she's just sobbing. She's just crying. I'm like, what the hell, what's going on here? I'm just looking. I'm nosing, like, looking. And he was like, yeah, I've been having sexual relations with this other woman. Remember I told you about the woman who looked sad across the table from me? It was her, right? She and I, we would be having sex. We had sex in my car, in the alley. We on this date. I'm talking about dates too. We had sex one night after Bible talk. In a friend's bathroom. We had sex at her parents' house when they were away. Just telling all this stuff, and I'm looking around. I don't see old girl. I don't see old girl nowhere. I'm like, well, shit. At least she dodged this damn bullet, right? But I'm feeling this secondhand embarrassment. Like, why are you putting all this? Like, yeah, it's your business, but why are you putting all this business out here and telling her business to this whole church like this, right? And like, he tell this whole story. He's crying. He was like, I just want to apologize to, old girl, and, and I made mistakes, and I'm a man, and I'm weak, and da-da-da-da-da, and everything. And he was like, as my fiance. I'm like, why he still referring to this lady as his fiance? Because clearly at this point, if it was me, you not my fiance no more. You single. You very much single, so you can do whatever you want to do, right? She's just sitting there crying, and then the shepherd's wife goes and gets her, right? And like picks her up kinda and guides her onto the stage. And she goes up there, and the man like hands her some flowers, and it was like, I've been, I confess my sins before people, and I've been forgiven by God. Can you forgive me? Was this woman supposed to say no? All right. So now she says yes. I forgive you, and whatever. And then the shepherd shepherds them off the stage, and he gets up there talking about, oh, that's so powerful, huh? Just encouraged to be strong in God and all this other stuff. And I'm sitting up here like, this woman just got a fool made of herself. This man just told another woman's business, and he gave her some darn $4.99 roses from Ralph's. That's the grocery store. And she's supposed to be okay with this and still supposed to be engaged to this? Baby, I'm single. You hear me? Like, single. Like, you ain't even married this man, and he didn't sat up here and gave a whole account of how he didn't flop this lady to the left, right, to the side. But you still married to him? Like, girl, the pickings can't be that slim. Like, I'm like, okay. So I'm like, okay. In churches, I'm like, why did that man get up there and embarrass these ladies like that? They was like, oh, in the Bible it says something. And these people, like, and they teach you the Bible where you can just quote the scripture. And they're like, oh, so-and-so, it says, confess our sins in front of others and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, but did he have to embarrass that lady like that? They was like, yeah, da-da-da-da, right? So I'm like, okay. Wednesday come and we have midweek. So one Wednesday would be for men's, the other Wednesday would be for women. Well, this Wednesday I get there and it's men and women in there. And I'm like, yo, why is the men and women here today? They're like, oh, it's a very special midweek, right? So I'm thinking, oh, they about to ask us for some more money. And I'm going to tell y'all that next, right? I'm like, they about to ask us for some more money. So they're like, yeah, it's a very special midweek. So I see old girl and she I feel like it's following me. So finally I say to her, you okay? She says, I'm not okay. And I'm like, you're not okay? Well, what's wrong? You want to go home? She's like, no, I have to be here. I said, why do you have to be here? She said, well, if I didn't come today, basically I'm going to get kicked out the church. And I'm like, for sex? You going to get kicked out of church for sex? Like, I'm pretty sure other people didn't have some sex in this church. You ain't going to get kicked out. She was like, no, I'm going to get kicked out. If I'm not here, I was supposed to be here on Sunday or whatnot. And she's like visibly shaking, right? And so then the shepherd wife comes over to me and she's like, oh, I see that you two have met. I really wanted you two to meet. And I said, yeah, I met her like a while ago. And she was like, yeah. She was like, I was thinking, she needs to move, right? And the girl's like, like, and she was like, she needs to move into a better environment, a more Christian environment. And I was thinking, since it's just you and your daughter, that, it would be really great for you to have some help on your rent. And, at her mom's right now where she's living, it's not a really good environment. There's a lot of sin and she doesn't make a lot of money. However, she can help you with like about $500 a month on your rent. And I was like, well, where's she supposed to live? She was like, with you. I was like, well, there's 2 bedrooms. One bedroom is my daughter's bedroom and the other bedroom is my bedroom. So we don't have a 3rd bedroom. Well, your daughter can sleep with you. I said, why would my daughter sleep with me? She sleeps in her own room. And she was like, well, she's still small. Oh, my kids slept in the bed with me until they were this age and this age. And we didn't have a lot of money. So there was times when, we were all in a 1 bedroom and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, yeah, that's nice. But no, I don't think so. And she was like, so you would leave a sister living in sin? I said, I'm pretty sure there's somebody else's house she can move into, just not mine. And she was like, well, why wouldn't you want her to live with you? I said, well, I don't know her, for one. 2, she don't even have half the rent. It's only $500. That's not even half my rent. And I said, and 3, I don't know her. And she was like, well, we're all sisters. We all know each other. She's like, well, we'll talk about it later. We need to get started. And the girl has this like piece of paper, right? She has this piece of paper and she's like clenching to it, like for dear life. I'm like, girl, that paper gonna be crumpled up by the time you get through. And she takes the paper and she goes to sit down and she sits beside me. And I'm like, girl, like, okay. She sits down and then the shepherd's wife comes together. Like, we have a very special midweek. We got a lot of God going on, a lot of convictions going on. And, and that's why we're here as a church, to encourage one another. They're always encouraging some shit. They're always encouraging something to encourage one another. And the shepherd's wife come right back on over there and like guides sis up in front of the group. And she gets this paper and she's very soft-spoken, right? And she like reads this script for word, and she went to name how they participated in the alley and in the car and in the bathroom and at the mama's, and they went on and all this other stuff, and everybody's just in there. Again, the fiance, who was not even a member of this region of church, came all the way from her region so she could hear this woman tell her how her and her fiance, because they sitting there holding hands, they're a united front. They sitting there holding hands. So now she can, not only did she hear her man say it on Sunday, now she can hear the woman say it on Wednesday. And she's just sitting there and she's like, before she was all boohoo and tears, now she's sitting there like this and they just holding hands. And I'm telling you, I had secondhand embarrassment on Sunday. When I tell you, I could have balled up and died, like physically died at that moment because I felt such embarrassment for this woman. I'm like, oh hell, listen, all right, this is insane, like that they would be doing that. Then at the end of it or whatever, they were like, oh, okay, this woman didn't get no flowers. Ain't nobody come hug her. She basically was just told to just okay, thank you, and kind of just shoot off the stage, right? I'm like, oh, okay. And she came back over there and she sat with her head down. I was like, oh no, baby, this couldn't have been none of me, right? So then they go to talking and they're like, it's been a lot going on, and that's why we're all here today to just talk about it, because we have special missions going on. So you was expected to give 10% every month, right? You expect to give 10%. And then they had this thing called special missions. I forget exactly what special missions was, but it's like they would go all over the world starting these little seed churches and stuff like that. So special missions was to put money into sending missionaries out to start other churches or something like that, right? Which would be they will ask you to stretch yourself, right? They will ask you to stretch yourself, right? Because God already gave you this money, right? So, maybe you need to downsize on your living. Maybe you need to cut back on eating out. Maybe you need to walk more instead of driving. Maybe you need to sell things in your home. Maybe you have an abundance of things. Maybe you need to take a roommate or two to help cut down on the rent. Like, you need to do all these things because you needed to be giving more money to God. So when special missions came around, they would ask you to give like another 20%. They never specified it, but it was kind of understood that the special missions was like 20%. In addition to your 10%, you still had to give your 10% tithes, but then you had to give your 20%. So they would ask you to make a budget or make a contribution amount, right? And then you got, however many weeks or whatever to come up with this amount, and that's how much you had to contribute. Okay, so there's people, mind you, I'm talking about these are a lot of college students in this thing now, right? So these college students that don't make a lot of money, they're now doing additional things. They're walking dogs. They're doing all this additional stuff so that they can come up with this money. So 10% also include if you got a refund check, scholarship money, your parents sent you some. The 10% that also included that, right? College students, y'all. There's some college students, and it's also young professionals. And when you just starting out, you're not making a lot of money, but they still young professionals, college students. It was the greater portion, including old people. It's a lot of old people. It's a big gap, right? And then some old people, right? So pension, retirement, they did not care. Social Security, they did not care, okay? 10%. And then your 20% was like special missions contributions, right? So they're up here talking about, and they're like, yes, a lot of people, y'all far off from y'all goal, right? And then they're also like, well, then we also feel like some people weren't realistic about their goal, right? I think he was talking to me. I know he was talking to me, right? And this is how I know. This is how I know, right? I say hit dog collar because he was like, some people, if you're giving $100, and then your special mission should be at least 2 to 3 times that. So your special mission should be $300. Well, if my was like $500, I said my special missions, my tithes was $500. I said my special missions for like $800. I did. Listen. I can't be giving y'all. You know what I can do with $800? You know what I can do with $800? I can go on vacation with $800. It was a lot of cheap flights out of LA, all over the world. Okay, you not about to sit up here and tell me I got this international airport down here, and I ain't gonna be able to take no flight because I didn't gave you $800. Now, mind you, special missions is not just one time a year. It's like 2 to 3 times a year that they're doing this, right? So I'm not about to give you all my money, right? So he was like, it's not real, and the wife and I will be, sitting down talking to some people. I'm like, oh yeah, I can expect to be sat down. So at this point, I'm identifying like, this is not really working for me, right? So fast forward, there's this new girl that's going to come in to the church, and she's starting her Bible studies. And they're like, hey, this is so-and-so. And she started to study the Bible with so-and-so. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, And she was like, well, we would like for you to join in on her Bible studies. And I said, yeah, I can't commit no more time. I have like no more time. I cannot commit any more time. They're like, you can't commit time to the Lord. You can't commit time to saving people because da 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 da. I'm like, yeah, I work full time. I go to school full time. And I'm a mom full time. I'm off about 8 to 10 days a month off mom duty. And in that time, I have to pick up on all the things that I have been slacking on or try to like work ahead in schoolwork and things like that. I'm like, I can't, there's no way I can commit to it. If I barely made it through my own Bible study, how am I going to commit to somebody else's? And they were like, yeah, you know, you should find time, da 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 da. I was like, okay, where's she studying the Bible at, right? Girl, studying the Bible clear across town, I can't do that. Based on traffic and everything else, I'm not going to make it. I said, I can't do that. Well, why not? Because it's too far and I have too much going on, right? So then the pastor's wife again talks to me at the gym. I'm on a stair climber, and she's like high strung, like she's like hell bent on caffeine every day. I don't know if she is or if that's just her personality. And she gets on the stair climber beside me. She's like, hey, how you been doing? What's going on? Prayed up, you know, you sold out for the Lord. And I'm like, yep. I'm just climbing the steps at this point. In my mind, I'm already planning my exit at this point. She was like, so I heard you didn't want to study with so-and-so. And I'm like, yep. And she was like, but you have time to come to the gym? I was like, yep. I was like, yep, I have to come to the gym. She was like, well, how do you have time to come to the gym, but you don't have time to study with her? I said, because my house is just across the street. Like, I lived across the street from 24-hour fitness. So my house is across the street. They're studying an hour away practically, and then an hour back. That's 2 hours just in traffic, and another probably hour and a half study. That's 3.5 hours I would commit to her that I need for myself, and I need for my health and my mental health, right? And she says, mental health, she's like, oh, I've been meaning to talk to you. How are you doing with that? Are you reading your Bible? I'm like, yeah, we're reading every day. And you still struggling with your mental health? Well, maybe you're not, you know, reading the Bible enough. Maybe you're not spending enough time with God. I said, do you think my mental health is related to me studying the Bible? I said, oh, okay. So at that point, I identified, I'm leaving some parts out because I could incriminate myself on some things, but I said, oh, okay. So I stopped going. After that point, I stopped going to church, right? You asking me for too much money. You got these like weird dating tactics, things that's going on. You pocket watching, and I don't like the way that you're treating women. Like it's. I get that they're, and you listen. I get that they're men and women, right? I'm all for traditional gender roles, right? I'm pro gender roles, right? If anybody knows me, they know that. I'm here for it, right? Sign me up. However, it's the way that it's gone about, right? Where women are just from you learn your place immediately, right? You are subjected to this lower place, even if your partner per se is not in a better financial, physical, any type of situation, right? I mean, they would get married and the wives would be carrying the bulk of the household finances, in addition to the wife carrying all of the financial loads, and the husbands would be just working at the quick copy, and they get married, you know, and she is now responsible. His credit is bad. Like, I know this one couple, and that's the other thing. You go from dating to you go from encouragement to courting to dating to married, right? Real fast. And why do you end up going from dating to courting to married, engaged to married real fast? Why? Because you can't do no hanky panky. So that encourages people to get down the aisle a lot quicker, right? Then they get down the aisle, and then the next day they're in a marriage with a goddamn stranger, a person that they don't know. But because we have the same faith and the same belief structure, we should be able to work out. Just like me and any random person from that church should be able to live together because we have the same belief structure, right? And we already know that's not gonna work, right? So they feel like they should all be able, you know, you should just be able to exist. Well, these women end up in relationships. Like, this one woman ended up in a relationship with this man who had a porn addiction, right? But she's married to him. His porn addiction is the reason why he can't maintain a stable job, right? The reason why he got fired from what was a better job, because he was watching it at work, You know what I'm saying? So now she done married this man. She doesn't know what he has been getting additional Bible studies and therapy about. They're assuming, oh, once they get married, he will no longer be watching porn because now he has his own, person to, engage with. Only for them to get married, and now the wife is responsible for a lot of the financial load as well as the physical labor load around the house. And this man got an addiction, so she not even feeling like, I hear women, they be like, oh, if the D is good, what I'm saying, I pay, when Jasmine Sullivan said if she pay his rent, if the D is good, she not even getting that because he has preferences to spend time with himself watching porn opposed to getting in bed with her, right? So it's like, too much was just going, I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it no more. Women are being marginalized too much, and they pocket watching. So I stopped going. Cold turkey, I stopped going. I remember, the cousin was still in the church, and the auntie also joined the church. Now, the auntie was a fair weather member, sort of kind of like how I was. She was more so in there because she just wanted to have that connection to her daughter. It was on her, her daughter. She wanted to have that connection. She was still doing her thing. And I just remember telling her, she was like, yeah, so-and-so reached out to me, said, you're not going to church. I said, yeah, I ain't going there no more. Yeah, auntie, I ain't going no more. I'm not going. I said, I can't do it. And she was like, yeah, girl, I understand. I said, yeah. I said, so you can tell them stop calling me, right? So she's like, okay. So, we fast forward. I'm talking about it was weeks. I mean, they're coming to my house, because like I lived also like across like a block from the church. Like, my building was tall, so you could see my building from the church. And they're coming by, they're ringing at the door. I'm like, y'all leave me alone. I'm good. I'm not going back. They try to find a few people I was close to at the church and like try to have them reach out. I'm like, yeah, I'm cool. But what I'm not knowing is at the same time I left, several other women left. Now, again, I'm not knowing this because I didn't base my decision on anybody else. I didn't know anybody else was having their own struggles or whatnot they were going through. I left because it wasn't working for me no more. I could only be so nosy, right? Like, it was enough for me. I got in, I saw that it was the bullshit I thought it was. They still doing it. And the crazy thing is this documentary from 2020 and Fox News is from years ago, right? But they're still doing the same thing, right? They still asking people to be sold out. I'm talking about people are selling their furniture. People are selling whatever they can. Facebook Market, well, Craigslist was the thing at the time. Craigslist, selling their stuff. This one guy got up and talking about how he sold his Jordan collection so he can make his contribution and everything. And I'm like, this is insane. This is just really insane that people are really selling out, and selling things, and they're separating people from their families. They discourage you from spending time with your family, and they're like, oh, you have to spend time with us. We're your family. You my church family, but they my blood family. They my family. When it comes down to it, like, y'all just the church people, right? And so I'm like, all right, I'm not going anymore. So it had to get a little ugly, at the end. I was like, I had to use words, like, leave me the F alone, I had to just be straight up, like, I'm done. I'm good. I'm not doing this no more. I don't want to participate in no way, shape, or form, right? So mind you, I'm still going to the gym. I'm still living in the same neighborhood. These people still live in the same neighborhood. So I'm seeing them around, right? And when I tell you I see them, and it's instant, like, don't come talk to me, right? So one day I'm outside my building, and one of the girls for church, I see her, and at the time, now we have a dog. So I have, the dog or whatever, he out doing his thing, and she just like stops her car, and she just like jumps out, and she's like, hey, and I'm like, I don't go to church no more, leave me alone, you like leave me alone, I don't go to church anymore, I'm not coming back, don't ask me about that church, like, I'm done, I'm good. And she's like, no, I heard you weren't there anymore, and I just want to let you know, I'm not there anymore either. And I was like, oh, okay, you're not there no more. What's up? How you doing? She was like, yeah. She was like, I saw you. She's like, I come through here on this way, to go to the gym. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. She was like, yeah, I just, wanted to say, hey, if you want to hang out sometime, or whatever. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. She was like, your number's still the same. I was like, yeah. She was like, yeah, I've been wanting to text you, but I didn't want you to think I was calling from, on behalf of the church. She was like, because, they still call me. I said, oh, yeah, I had to get it straight. Like, don't call me. I had to let them know not to call me no more. She was like, yeah, I thought I did a good job with it. Da, da, da. I was like, no, you was too nice about it. I was very, very disrespectful about it. And I told them not to contact me anymore. And I feel like the word got out pretty good for them not to contact me. She was like, oh, maybe I should do that. I was like, yeah. So fast forward, we hanging out. Our kids about the same age or whatever. And she's telling me, like, these people were trying to, like, isolate her from her mom. She had just had a baby, right? So her baby like a year younger than mine. She was like, they were trying to isolate her from her mom. They were like trying to tell her not to be around her baby daddy. Like, men from the church told him not to come over there anymore and all this other stuff. And she was like, they were trying to like move her in with this older lady and all this other stuff. And she was like, no, like, that's not what she was like. I want my relationship with the Lord, but that doesn't mean that I need other people to control my life and all this other stuff. And she was like, they would drive by to see if her baby daddy's car was in the yard. She was like, yeah, it would be times where he would come over and spend time with the baby, but like in the living room, like, or whatnot. She was like, they would drive by and be like, oh, we see his car in the driveway. And she'd be like, yeah, if you drove by, you could have stopped in and said hi. And they were like, no, we didn't want to do that because, you got him over there. And she was like, he's over here visiting with his daughter or whatever. Like, and she was like, it just got to a point where I was like explaining myself too much. And she was like, I couldn't do it, right? And yeah, it just kind of went on. And other people, over time was telling their story. And we always having like these stories where it's just like, we get it. Like, we get that there are ground rules in the Bible, but it was so controlling and so demanding. And they target people that are in vulnerable positions, single mom, people that are financially strapped, because they give you this sense of community. Like, if you ever need anything, baby, they're gonna be there for you. Like, if you ever need anything or you whatever, it doesn't even matter. They're gonna show up for everything. They don't even need to know you. They will love bomb you so heavy, like, oh my God. And it's always like, I love you, oh, and the woman was telling me when I left church, I need you, my soul hurts because you're not around, like, I need you. I said, I don't ever want to be in a position where anybody needs me like that, and they would be like, well, you're hurting the church when you don't come, blah, blah, blah. I said, I bet it is. I bet y'all missing my monthly financial contributions because the bulk of the church is broke college students. Like, it makes sense that you would miss me, right? And I feel like people with different type of jobs, they would try to reel them in as tight as they could. They would like try to reel them in as tight as they could because they want to hold on to them. And the other thing I noticed that they would take people and they would send them on missions. If they felt like they couldn't control you in the space that they had you in, they would try to send you like, oh, you've been chosen to go on this mission. And they would send you to clear across the world to Australia or something like that and get you out there where you can't work, you can't do all this other stuff, and get you out there, and then you're fully dependent on the church to provide your needs. So it's a humbling experience. Like, they be humble. Everything was about being humble, be humble, be humble. And it's like, these people were talking about they were working like 80 hours a week for this church just to have basic room and board. And if they weren't recruiting people or bringing people into the church, it was all about bringing people in. Did you share your faith? Did you share your faith? Did you share your faith? And if you was like, yeah, I share my faith. Well, why didn't you bring anybody to church with you? Why didn't you? Like, they always wanted you to be bringing people to church with you as well. And the more people you brought to church would be the more people they would love bomb and get them to Bible study, then get them baptized and start getting tithes from them. It was like it was like multi-level marketing. You know what I'm saying? It was totally like the Herbalife. Hey, you want to go to a free workout with me? And then next thing you know, you're there and they're like, oh yeah, here, try this shake. Oh, the shake's pretty good. Yeah, these are Herbalife shakes. The next thing you know, you're an Herbalife consultant. And it was basically the same thing. And they didn't say that there was a quota, but baby, if you didn't bring somebody, you're not sharing your faith enough. You're not sharing your faith enough. I remember one time this girl was like, yeah, I haven't shared my faith today or whatever. Like, she's texting, I'm not haven't shared my faith today. You want to go with me out? I just want to talk to some people. Girl, it's 9:00 at night. Who you about to go talk to? Like, I'm not about to get dressed, get my baby up and go, well, just I just want to go out and share my faith. Baby, you have to go out on your own at 9:00 at night in North Hollywood. I'm not going with you. I just really need to share my faith. I need your support. I need your encouragement. And I'm like, babe, I'm not going. Call somebody else. Get somebody else to do it. Like, I was like, it's not that serious. Just make a better effort tomorrow. Like, if you didn't get to do it today, make a better effort tomorrow. Like, God knows your heart for real. Like, he knows that you have the desire to want to share your faith, but that doesn't mean that if you miss a day that you need to get up and go out at 9 o'clock at night to do so. That doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense for me to get up and go do it either. Like, I'm not understanding. And so, it was just like little stuff like that. Only to learn, like, as it got on, it was like people were chastised and they felt really bad. Like, they didn't have people that wanted to come to church with them if they couldn't meet these special mission contributions. Also, they would have people like giving up their jobs. So if you had a job, say like say you had a job working in like the medical field, like you were a nurse and you signed up and your contract was for you to work nights, baby, they would be like, you might need to look at getting a new job. And you'd be like, what? Like, you need to get a new job because you're gonna miss the Wednesday night Bible group, you're gonna miss the Friday night, and you're also, gonna miss afternoon Bible studies with people because your job is gonna take you away from the church. So you need to get a different job. You need to get a job that can have you available for Bible studies with random people, shaking buckets on Saturdays, Wednesday Bible talks, Wednesday midweeks, Friday Bible talks. You need to be available for this, in addition to the conferences. In addition to the conferences, again, and the conferences you had to pay to go to, the conferences would be like $200 and $300 to go to these conferences as well. Yeah. So it was a constant thing. It was a constant money grab. It was forced to put you in a place to where you were heavily dependent on other people. They isolated people from their families and had them move in together. If you go and you search the search box on YouTube, ICOC or ICC, you will see people with the same story. People that, from different times, like all the way back to like the 90s up into present day, you will see people that have like these full stories, like, surviving a cult or whatever. To be honest, I 100% got all the way in because I'm nosy. Yeah, I'm nosy. I think it was why it was easier for me to get out, because once I found the expose and I saw the immediate correlation, like, I was like, nobody changes. There's nothing that's changed about it for the point for me to feel like, oh, it's gonna be different for me. You know what I'm saying? It's like when a girl be like, oh, he gonna treat me better. No, they did the exact same or tried to do the exact same stuff to me that they did to other people, and it's just crazy to see how it goes on. The churches is in 48 states. I think it's not in Arkansas. Oh, 47. Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee. Those are the 3 states that it's not in. And you can kind of see it, right? It's a population issue. They want to go, where larger populations are. But also at the same time, baby, it's going to be hard to run a cult in either of the 3 of those states. I mean, it's going to be hard. That's going to be a hard sell. And considering I'm from Arkansas, I was like, this ain't making sense. This ain't making sense. The Bible Belt, baby. I'm talking about they Bible toting, scripture quoting where I'm from. Like, it's a hard sell from people from very religious places, So I can see why there are not churches in those 3 states at this time. So that's my story, y'all. I know I owe this story to a couple people, but, give y'all a little something different today. How I ended up in a cult. And I'm okay for it. It's a good story to tell. It's a very long story now that I'm looking at the timer. And I left a lot of stuff out only for it's a long story, but also the fact that I'm not gonna say in the end I behaved the most appropriate way myself. And I don't know if there's no laws against that or whatnot, but I had to get my point across to leave me and my baby alone, and I did what I had to do. Okay, so I thank you all for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, or share. Let me know if you've ever been in a cult, thought about signing up for one, or even if you've been approached by this, particular group. Until next time, bye.